This morning I'm going to talk to you about the 2018 volcanic eruptions at Kilauea Volcano. And this slide, I just want to point out some physiographic features. We're looking at the southeast portion of the island of Hawaii, where the eruptions occurred. And I would like you to keep in mind, and we'll discuss this more as we go through the presentation. And I'm not sure where that's happening. That we have a rift zone, and I'll explain what that is in subsequent slides. Pu'o vent located here in the middle rift zone, and the lower east rift zone here. And there's a geothermal plant that I worked on for about 8 years down here in the lower east rift zone. And they all play a role in the eruption sequence. So in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about my background, my why, the overall geologic setting of Hawaii, the big picture, the eruptions that occurred in 2018, the effect on human beings, the human impact, and then I have a trick question at the end. So as Craig has mentioned, I'm a geologist with over 40 years of experience. I co-own the geology company. I worked on volcanoes for geothermal energy development for about 25 years or so. And then in 2014, I also got involved in financial services because I want to work with the community. In my business, I do life insurance and annuities, business owner cost savings, and wealth preservation. And I won't talk any more about that. If you're interested, let's do a one-on-one. I can explain what goes on here. My why is my family. I have 3 kids, 11 grandchildren, and soon to have 12, and a passion for helping people and businesses. Let's talk about the volcano. First, I want to acknowledge that many of the graphics and illustrations that you're going to see are taken from the United States Geological Survey, and some graphics were taken from Google. So let's start with the big picture. Hawaii and the island of Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands, are part of the Hawaiian Emperor Seamount chain, which is about 3,600 miles long, about 5,800 kilometers, and it's been around for about 81 million years. So this has been a long-term volcanic area. And the reason why we have a chain is that the plate that where the volcanoes occur has been moving to the northwest, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. So the Hawaiian Islands are the youngest part of the Emperor Seamount Hawaiian chain, and these graphics show the big picture of the Emperor Hawaiian chain, the islands of Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii, and where the lower east rift zone occurs is shown on this one here. Kilauea Volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii is the youngest of 5 volcanoes on the Big Island. And where the eruptions occur were in the lower east rift zone. And the rift zone is part of the an arm of the volcano, and we'll go into a little bit more details. Now, you all may remember the Ring of Fire from high school and college. And the reason why we have the Ring of Fire is that the Earth is broken up into a number of plates that move around. And as one plate goes underneath another one, the plate melts as it goes to depth and generates magma, molten rock, which comes to the surface, creates a volcano. And that's why we have volcanoes around the Pacific Rim and other areas around the planet. But Hawaii is in the middle of the ocean. The Emperor Seamount chain is in the middle of the ocean. What causes that? And that's a hotspot. And let's talk about what a hotspot is for a moment. But before we do that, I promised Craig that I would have a slide that I would name for him. And the slide talks about, this slide just shows 2 of the basic types of volcanoes that we have. stratiform volcanoes, which Mount Fuji in Japan is a classic example. The volcanoes in the Cascade Range in the United States are another a great example, and shield volcanoes. And you can see there's a difference in shape. That's due to the eruptive style and the chemistry of the magma that comes out of those volcanoes. There's a third type that's a combination of the two, but we won't go into that in this presentation. Now, one thing that's interesting about shield volcanoes is because of their mass, when they sit on the oceanic crust, they collapse into 3 arcs. And those arcs are called rift zones. And those rift zones are essentially arms of the volcano. They're extensions of the volcano. And that's what we have in Hawaii. So, but let's get back to the hotspot and why do they occur? To explain that, I'd like to show you that a cross section of the Earth shown in this slide. And if you look at a cross section of the Earth is composed of a thin crust, a mantle, and a core. And the Earth is very much akin, if you will, to an apple. If you slice an apple, what do we see? We see the skin of the apple, we see the pulp of the apple, and we have a core. And the rough proportions of the skin, apple, and core in an apple, we could approximate that's what the crust, mantle, and core of the Earth look like. The crust is really thin. So the crust breaks up, as moves around, that creates the plates. The plates spread and sink. When they sink, they melt and form volcanoes. Now, in many places, not many, but there are a number of places on the planet where nanomaterial comes up very shallow into the crust, and those are called hotspots. So here is an illustration where we have a hotspot generated in the mantle coming up to the oceanic crust, forming the island of Hawaii, and through time it also formed the Emperor Sea Mountain chain. If we look a little bit closer and look at Kilauea Volcano and the East Rift Zone, shown here in this inset, you have the hotspot coming up, feeding the volcano, and it also feeds the East Rift Zone and the volcanism that occurs there. So this is where we started. We looked at the lower East Rift Zone. We looked at the Puna Geothermal Ventures, the geothermal site on the lower East Rift Zone. We have Pu'u vent that is in the middle Rift Zone, and Pu'u vent started erupting in January of 1983. I was personally blamed for some of that eruption because I was working and testing a geothermal well in the geothermal field in the lower East Rift Zone, and the volcano started spewing lava. And it was obvious to everyone on the island and written up in the paper that it was my fault. That's another story. And then as we move up the Rift Zone, we have the upper Rift Zone, and then we have Kilauea Volcano itself. The eruption occurred in the lower East Rift Zone, and it started around the end of April when the Pu'u crater and the eruption cycle that was going on there collapsed and ceased activity. And then around the 30th, from the end of April to the beginning of May 2nd, we had increased seismicity in the area shown in this graphic in the middle Rift Zone and lower East Rift Zone. And here's some of the seismicity that occurred. The size of the dot and the color of the dots relate to the magnitude of the earthquakes, and the large blue dot indicates that the 6.9 earthquake that occurred on the 4th of May. And these earthquakes are related to the movement of magma in the Rift Zone, as well as there's tectonic forces that and faulting in the area that we won't go into in this presentation. This slide shows the fissures that are developed in the East Rift Zone. I'm a little bit reluctant to use my keypad because here we go. It keeps advancing the slides. Well, Leilani Estates is a housing community right on the Rift Zone. It's fairly highly developed. It's unfortunate that they built a housing community right on the Rift Zone. That's a whole nother story. One of which I had a long discussion with the mayor in the mid-'80s of why they were doing that, because it's one of the most dangerous places on the planet. But you know, politics and development, real estate, many of you know, sometimes dominates science. And I want to call your attention to fissure number 8. That's the, we'll talk about that more later in the presentation. But these fissures occurred between the 3rd and 6th of May, and wreaked a lot of havoc. And I have some graphics. This is a fissure eruption, some fountaining that occurs. Some more fountaining of different type. Imagine going down the road and seeing the road melting in front of your eyes because of the eruption sequence. And now the thing is not advancing. I told, okay, I need some computer training, but let me back up, see if I could do that. Okay. I'll control it from another screen. I was telling Craig that at one point I was on the lava field and my up at the Poirot vent, and my field boosts were melting. It was starting to smoke. My lungs were starting to burn from the gases, and I got a radiation burn on my face from being close to the lava. Time to get off of this. Here's a picture of the road, and this is a road, if any of you know the Beyond of Hawaii, from Pahoa to Kalapana, which has been closed for a long time because of the Poirot vent eruptions. But you can see the offset in the divider in the road that occurred due to some lateral movement of the faults, and the steaming ground that occurred, and this person is standing on some lava that is not that old. Then at one point in the eruption, we had an ash cloud develop, and we'll talk about that more in a bit. And I want to show this picture of lava going down to the ocean from the Poirot vent before it collapsed back at the end of April. And the fissure eruption that occurred in the lower East Rift Zone that we'll talk about more. And then the migration of the lava to an area of Kapoho Bay, which is on the tip, southeastern tip of the Big Island of Hawaii. And I'll show a graphic about that and what the effects of that was. And I want to point out that lava flows from islands, from shield volcanoes, like a river. And this should be a river system anywhere on the planet, but this is lava. Obviously the red areas are where it's hotter, and the dark areas is where it's cooled. So you can see how it flowed out, and it just lazily goes down the slope out to the ocean. So let's go through the events. On April 30th, the Poirot vent in the middle rift zone collapses, and the magma starts moving down towards the Puna area in the lower East Rift Zone. The Puna area is the area of this, in the southeast portion of the Big Island of Hawaii. Ground cracks on the lower East Rift Zone start developing in Leilani Estates. That started around May 2nd. We have a fissure eruption on May 3rd. And these fissure eruptions are very impressive when you see them live. We had the earthquake on the 4th, and that earthquake probably allowed more magma to get into the very lower portion of the lower east rift zone. Between the 9th and 12th of May, we had a lull in the fissure activity. And then on the 10th, up on Kilauea Volcano, the Halibamau lava lake disappears. And that's that circular area. Let me see if I can move my cursor. This is where the lava lake was. It disappeared. This is the Halibamau crater and the Hawaii Volcano Observatory, which is a U.S. Geological Survey scientific station to study Kilauea Volcano, is located right there. Now, and then on the 16th, we had the onset of explosive events of an ash cloud, the picture I showed you earlier, which reached 30,000 feet above sea level. So what happened on the Kilauea crater itself? We had the lake collapse. Some type of blockage may have occurred. Groundwater started to interact with the lava that was collapsing. The lava and the water don't like to interact with each other. When they do, the water turns to steam. It's very explosive, creates an ash cloud. So these are two LiDAR photos of what the Kilauea caldera, the Halibamau crater, and the lava lake look like before the collapse and then after the collapse. And on the bottom, we see a cross-section of what exactly this collapse looks like. And in cross-section, the collapse was over about 600 feet in depth. And just for reference, we have the Empire State Building off on the right-hand side, so you can get a sense of how deep that collapse was. So when it collapsed, it created an ash cloud. And being that this is Hawaii, things are very casual. People went out, and here you have a young woman in the back of a pickup truck taking a selfie, someone taking a picture of her. You have some people on the golf course golfing, while others are looking at the ash cloud erupting, going to 30,000 feet. Fortunately, the wind was blowing in into the photo and to the right, so not affecting the golfers. But in Hawaii, things are taken in stride, as many of you probably know. So on the 27th of May, the eruptions were getting more intense, volcanic activity was getting more intense. We were getting ground cracking on the highway here. It's more steamy as the lava is reaching the surface, culminating in fissure eruptions, and we have a picture of some fountaining taking place. On June 3rd, the lava erupted from fissure number 8, which was in the middle of the fissure field in the Leilani Estates. And it reached the Kapoho Bay Harbor, which is located on the southeast tip of the Big Island. I should mention, when I was working here in the mid-'80s to early 90s, I would be interacting with people in the Leilani Estates. And at that time, the bottom floor of the lanais, some of them were steaming. So it wasn't like the people that lived there didn't know that they were sitting on top of a volcano. So the collapse at Kilauea ended on August 2nd. And then there was an eruptive pause from the fissure eruption noted on the 17th of August. And then we had weak activity between August and September. And the eruption was declared over, or quiescence, quiet, because we never know when it's really over. But it became quiet, and it was declared So on the 5th of December. So this slide shows how much lava, it's a preliminary map of the lava flow thickness that occurred. Lulani Estates and Fissure 8, you can see on the left-hand side of the slide. And the colors represent different thicknesses of lava that was generated by the eruption of Fissure 8. The green is the thinnest. It ranges from 0 to 16 feet or 0 to 5 meters. The red is the thickest. It ranges from 180 to 900, a little bit over 900 feet in thickness, or 55 to 280 meters. And the thickest along the ocean because it's cooling there. But you should get a sense of how significant this eruption was. So what happened at the human scale? We had about 14 square miles of new land, that was covered by lava flows, or 35 square kilometers. We created about 3.5 square kilometers, or 1.4 square miles of new land, or 875 acres. 700 homes were destroyed in this eruption, which didn't have to happen if they didn't build on the East Rift Zone. And almost $1 billion in damages. So the trick question for the club is, what is the youngest Hawaiian volcano? Does anyone like to venture a guess?
It's underwater.
Who said that? So
Hugh said that. It's underwater.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. It's Lohi. And Lohi is located almost due south of Kilauea. It is the current location of the plate that the Hawaiian Emperor Seamount chain lies on, and it's where it's melting currently. So in about 10,000 years or so, Lohili will breach the surface and become a subaerial volcano. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to give this presentation, and I'll be glad to answer any questions in the remaining time.
All right, we have some questions. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning. I have a question. Thank you for your excellent presentation. And I've been to the Big Island many times, and it is amazing it's so sad about the homes that were built. I have a question. Is the observatory still present and there and functioning?
My understanding it is, but I haven't spoken to anyone there since the eruption occurred.
And also a second question is, when that gentleman with the helmet was standing on the road, did he have special shoes or boots on that would prevent the heat from hurting him?
I doubt it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What you do, you just have to be extremely careful. On occasion, you'll see people in fire retardant suits, very close, but it's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story. I met a French volcanological couple many years ago, and their dream, their desire was to canoe down a lava flow. It was crazy. Yeah. And they subsequently died in a volcanic eruption in the South Pacific. They were just a little bit too uncautious. You have to respect the volcano.
Sounds like a one-way trip.
Yeah.
Question. I think they win the Darwin Award for that.
Definitely. Definitely.
They win some type of award.
Joe, yeah. in real estate in Hawaii, is there some kind of disclosure that you're sitting on a volcano when you buy a piece of real estate?
You know, I don't know that in any detail. I do know that, and it wasn't discussed when I had the discussion with the mayor back in the mid-'80s. We didn't talk about that particular aspect. I did hear some newscasts during the eruption that people didn't realize they lived on a volcano. which I couldn't understand at all, because as soon as you land in Hawaii, you realize it's advertised everywhere, because that's one of the attractions of living in Hawaii. I'll tell you a short story here. Back in, right after Loma Prieta, it must have been the early 90s, I met a woman that was leaving California because of the earthquakes. I asked her, where is she going? And she goes, oh, you don't know the place. I'm going to this little place in Hawaii. Oh, no, I'm working in Hawaii. You know, where are you? It turns out that she wanted to move to Kapoho. Kapoho is where Kapoho Bay is. There's a volcanic cone that was formed in 1960. And I explained to her that she'll be living on the Lower East Rift Zone. It's one of the world's most active volcano tectonic environments on the planet. Her eyes bulged out, and she didn't talk to me again. And I don't know if she ever moved to Kapoho, but you know, people just don't recognize sometimes where they're moving to. And obviously, whatever research she did didn't disclose that it was an active volcano.
One more question, thank you. And that is, could you compare the situation in Hawaii to Mount St. Helens and like Mount Diablo and the mountains that surround us? Are we sitting on a similar situation with volcanoes?
Here in the Bay Area, in the immediate Bay Area, Mount Diablo are not volcanoes. There are some volcanic products on the southwest side of Mount Diablo.
It's a ridge.
There was a volcanic activity here millions of years ago, and it migrated up through Napa Valley and Mount Konocti, north of the geysers, if you know where that is in Northern California. Mount Konocti is a volcano, and that area between Mount Konocti and Napa, the subsurface is hot, but that the magma that underlies that area is moving north. So the Bay Area doesn't have any magma underneath it per se. North of us, we do have magma in the subsurface in certain areas.
Joe, I've
Jeff.
got a question for you. What about like development? And if you're in Hawaii, I mean, are there, you know, people have lived there for many, many years, but I mean, do you have, can they build up, I don't know, how far away do they have to be from that fissure point that you pointed out?
Well, you know, you can't predict where the eruptions are going to occur. But you can see where this housing community probably wasn't affected. The rift zone is, I apologize that it keeps moving on me. Let's see if I could go back. I can't go back. I'm losing control of my screen. Here we go. Our best guess is you see the dotted oval.
Right.
Yeah. You know, that's a little bit off kilter, but it roughly approximates the northern boundary of where we think the Lower East Rift Zone is. So I would say anywhere north of that boundary is relatively fine. But there's two other major volcanoes. We have Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea north of Kilauea, and they may erupt at some point. And in the past, there were eruptions. The pink, I think, is from the 1960. That might not be correct. But the whole island is covered by lava flows. And that's what creates the island. So there's no place except to the north portion of the island. But I would say anything south of Pahoa is not a really good place to be living along the rift zone.
Accurate are the, and I would imagine you guys have like seismic graphs and monitors and everything everywhere, but are those things very, very accurate as far as the overall geology of the island, or is it more of just a you know, can you tell where the different areas of activity are going to be? Can you forecast it accurately?
Yeah, it all depends on what type of, what's your definition of accuracy, and what type of resolution you want. You know, we never have enough monitoring. We have monitoring taking place, but there's never enough. And enough is always dictated by what problem you're trying to solve. So no, we know based on the monitoring that we're doing that magma was moving down the rift zone. We know we picked that up. We picked that up in the seismicity, and there's also other data sets that they had that show that. But it's always a question of how much data and how much money do you want to spend to do that.
Joe, I have a question about the geothermal drilling that was going on. I know there was a lot of talk about, you know, that some of that may have triggered some of the flows. But when you're altering the plumbing by pumping in fluids or doing stuff like that, how far away could you potentially, you know, trigger eruptions? Because I remember seeing images of landslides off that caldera that would cause, you know, eruptive explosions as some of that material was thrown into the fresh lava. But could you expand a little bit on some of that drilling?
Yeah, I could tell you actually a lot about that question, because I was also involved in a number of projects in enhanced geothermal systems. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you are generating fractures in the earth, man-made fractures, you
right.
create seismicity. You have to be keeping track of where that seismicity is going. That's where we have a lot of instrumentation out, and we're measuring it. We specifically designed the instrumentation to look at that. I could tell you categorically the activities of the geothermal drilling in this lower east rift zone did not trigger any eruption on Kilauea. It's not a magnitude sufficient enough to do that. I mentioned earlier, I was blamed for the eruption. I was testing a well. And because the steam was coming out of the well, it was obvious that it was my fault. I was releasing Madame Pele's breath. And she was angry and she got pissed and erupted. You know, that's a nice metaphorical statement, but it's not scientifically correct. Yeah. So, you know, do you want, for example, do you want to drill right on the San Andreas and do some fracturing? Probably not.
No.
But we know we could safely drill on volcanoes and develop geothermal energy. It's been done all over the planet. And as far as I know, there's been no juxtaposition of drilling activities and a volcanic eruption. And if it did, it would just be you know, coincidental.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh. Who wants to go first?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Josephine.
Tell me, when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD and buried that whole area, yeah. Do you have, are these earthquakes and eruptions, do they each have a personality? I mean, are they all different, or can you kind of make these kind of equal comparison?
We can make for comparative analysis. As I mentioned earlier, there's two types of major volcanoes: stratiform and shield. We know that shield volcanoes, eruptions are pretty passive. The type of, because of the chemistry of the lava, the type of magma that flows out and forms lava fields in Hawaii is very passive. As I mentioned, that I was about 10 meters, 30 feet away from the Pu'o vent when I got the radiation burn. That was a little bit too close. If there was an eruption on a stratiform volcano, 25 miles, people had died. We had a USGS geologist die when they were 25 miles away from the volcano. Vesuvius and the impact on volcano Pompeii and Herculean, they were down gradient of where the eruption occurred. So the eruptive products, which was eruptions, were explosive. they moved down the earth, and there's different types of lava flows. With stratiform volcanoes, there could be very destructive, very explosive.
I see. So they don't explode anymore, though?
Oh, no, Vesuvius is still active.
Oh.
Naples is one of the most dangerous places to live on the planet because they're sitting in the caldera. So, yeah. Naples, clearly at some point Naples is going to be destroyed by a volcanic eruption, a serious volcanic eruption.
Well, wow, thank you, Joe.
Yeah. Bill has his hand up.
Bill,
Good morning, Joe, and thanks for a very interesting update on volcanic activity here. My first experience with volcanism was when I was 8 years old. I was living in Nice, France. My dad was deployed with the 6th Fleet as a Marine officer. And he would come back every few months and bring us a present. He brought me a piece of lava from Mount Etna with the importation of the leaf that the guide used to pluck it off of the stream. It was amazing. Anyway, in my mountaineering days, we have climbed Mount Rainier, Mount Hood many times, and the minor ridges down below that, of course, Mount Shasta, and also one of our favorite places for mountaineering is Mount Lassen. And as you know, in 1915, Mount Lassen erupted mainly with, I think it was, pyroclastic flows, gas, a lot of smoke and ash. I don't think there was much lava. But anyway, my question is this. Actually, it's a two-part question. If you drew a graph and go back as far as you want to go, I don't know, maybe even to the 1800s or 1700s when there was a huge volcanic eruption in the Pacific. They made a movie called East of Java. I can't remember what the peak was or the volcano was, but it actually— Krakatoa, yeah, that's it. Krakatoa, and isn't it true that the East Coast, the northeastern states, never had a summer that year because of the circulating dust cloud all over the earth? And the second part of the question is, getting back to Mount Lassen, I mean, it's 10,400 feet. It erupted in 1950. What are the chances of a second eruption that would affect the Bay Area? I mean, it's only 200 miles to the north, correct?
Yeah. The entire Cascade Range, the High Cascade Range is dormant. I don't know if you recall, but maybe 5 to 10 years ago, there was concern that the Three Sisters in Oregon may have an eruption associated with it because it was bulging on the mountain. And that bulging was due to magma inflating it. There is going to be some eruptions that occur from the Cascade volcanoes. When they occur, no one knows. When Yellowstone goes, you may have heard the term supervolcano. There are volcanoes and then there are supervolcanoes. A supervolcano is, if an eruption occurs from a volcano of this type, most of life on the planet will be destroyed because of a volcanic winter. There'll be just a lot of destruction that occurs. When something like that might happen is anyone's guess. And we just hope that it's not, anytime before we learn how to move off the planet and colonize the other parts of the universe. Which will probably have its own associated problems. No, the Earth is a dangerous place. You have volcanoes, you have tornadoes, you have earthquakes, among other things.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thanks for joining us this morning. That was a fantastic presentation. And we're going to go ahead and end the Golden Gate Breakfast Club meeting now. It's we're over a few minutes, so thank you everyone for sticking around and joining us. And thank you, Joe, for your awesome presentation today. And we'll keep the room open for a little bit if anyone wants to ask additional questions. I'm going to end the recording here, and thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Good job, Joe.
Okay, thank you.